And she goes, because everybody in the organization thought you didn't want it.
Yeah. See?
And I was in that moment where I thought, when did I tell them that?
It's
I
just
don't
an assumption that is
remember.
made.
And there was a moment of learning for me. It's like, okay, be careful about what you say, because for whatever reason, that particular journey would have, or that opportunity would have slipped by.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the HumanizeHer Podcast. I'm your host, Erica Lockheimer.
And I'm your co-host, Elizabeth.
Today's guest, Aarathi Vidyasagar, is a true powerhouse in the tech world and a dear friend who's been walking the walk in the community support for women in tech. A graduate of the prestigious Indian Institute of Technology, where she was one of 11 women in a class of 500, Aarathi went on to build a staggering 17-year legacy at SAP Ariba. She started as an entry-level software engineer and rose the ranks to VP of Engineering. She later moved to LinkedIn to bridge the gap between complex enterprise data and consumer social platforms. Today, she serves as the VP of Engineering and Science at Uber. And she is a leader who balances high-level strategy with deep technical craft. And she's even known to complete the delivery runs herself to truly have empathy for the driver experience and stress test her own code. Let's get into it. This episode of HumanizeHer is brought to you by BitGo. Just like we believe every woman deserves the tools to thrive, BitGo believes every business deserves the digital asset infrastructure to scale. Because digital represents more accessibility, more transparency, and more possibilities for everyone. Thank you, BitGo, for sponsoring Women's Voices. Super excited today because we have an amazing guest and also colleague and friend. Used to work with Aarathi Vidyasagar for many years at LinkedIn, both of us. So this is a true honor to have you today. So thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me, Erica and Liz. I mean, it's amazing to be here. I've missed you.
Oh, I've missed you.
I've got both my former bosses up in here, my boss ladies. I love it.
No, it's been an amazing journey, and I think that's what's wonderful. It's a community where we've stayed connected, and I also want to give a big, huge kudos to you because when I started HumanizeHer, Elizabeth and I had told you and reached out to you, and you were one of our first community sponsors. So I just want to say thank you. That's where you're actually walking the walk and doing the true support. So thank you for that.
I owe it all to you. I think until I came to LinkedIn, realizing the power of community, I think is something that I saw you do and do very well. So for me, that was an inspiration, and anything that you bring for community after that is just something I do want to be a part of.
All right. Well, we're going to continue to go strong, and thank you for that. It's amazing. And I can't wait to get into your history and your career journey and where you're at. You're at Uber right now, a VP. You were also a VP at LinkedIn. You're a VP at Ariba. And then you also have a tremendous journey in education. And so I want to start from like where you went to school, because I heard it's a big freaking deal to go to IIT. So can you just start there? And then we're going to get into all the amazing things that you're doing now and building at Uber.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with IIT.
Okay.
It is one of those hard to get in schools in India, and in the days that I was in, going to college.
What is IIT first?
It's Indian Institute of Technology.
Okay.
There were 5 sort of centers. I think in the time that I was taking the test in the 90s, it was like about 2 lakh students or 200,000 students would apply, and 1% would make it.
Wow.
And so it was definitely very hard to get into. Very few students, even fewer female students. So imagine my plight. I had studied in a girls' Catholic school all of my life, and here I am in a school full of boys. And I think our particular sort of graduating class had 11 girls amongst about 500 boys.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
That's a really small class then.
It's a very small class. So it was a super elite school. There were 5 centers, so it's like a pretty small set of, engineers, but some really smart folks come out of that school.
Like you.
So,
Yeah.
I know, not to brag.
Yes, I love it.
yeah.
Own it.
I know. And what was the curriculum? I mean, is it different majors?
Yeah. It was different majors. So depending on how well you did in the class, the test that you took, you got to do different majors. It was a pretty intense process to get in. Like, I think when I was prepping for it, We would study for 2 years straight up for a separate exam. I've heard that process has become even more intense now. And children like get shipped to boarding schools where they prep for this exam. But it's a super nice, environment. I think I've made some of my best lifelong, friends and relationships, and also it's an amazing alumni, community as well.
And do you know who those 11 women that were in your class? Are you still close with them?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So, and they're all doing very well and, in amazing places in their lives. Some started companies, CEOs, and some, worked for Pfizer, were part of sort of the vaccine rollout process, and like some incredible things.
How many women were in your specific class?
We were just 2 of us.
Oh, wow.
In my particular department. And so I had to learn to sort of be in this male dominated world very, very early. So my sort of process had been blend and merge, don't be seen, was what I had started life with. And for a very long time, did that.
And how was that culture? How were the men with you, or did they turn out to be sponsors or allies, or was it a struggle? Or
it was definitely a struggle.
Okay.
I mean, in college, like when you go, you're young. In India, we start school when we are 17, 18 years old. And imagine you get into this world and you're sort of finding your place in a large-ish university, but at the same time, you're one of the few of a kind in a room. In fact, my very first classroom experience was this, like first year in college, we used to have combined classes. So it was this lecture hall with about 60, 70 students, and it was a math class. And it just so happened that I was the only female student there. And so it was one of those, auditoriums that had lots of seats, etc. And I was like, let me find the cornermost seat where nobody would notice me. And, we had this professor walk in, and the first thing he says, let's welcome the only lady student in the class.
Wow.
And I'm like, please, earth split, let me get swallowed.
so much for blending and hiding.
Yeah. And I had the entire classroom turn and look at me, and I'm like, yeah, that's not what I was going for.
How awkward. But I mean, he was probably trying to do something
I
good.
think he was trying to
Kudos that
be
you're here.
nice. And, he was, but I mean, little did he know that that's not what I wanted in that
Trying
moment.
to be
But, yeah.
inclusive and it's alienating instead.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
And then, so how long was that program? I'm just trying to understand the
It's a-
equivalency to here in the U.S.
It's like a 4-year BS program. So we graduated with a degree called Bachelor in Technology. So, yeah.
Wow.
So.
And then when you come out of a school like that, because that's like the Ivy Leagues in India, I assume.
Yep.
So you're just ready to jump into the workforce, or did you have to go to internships? What's the next play?
Well,
after?
I decided to sort of pursue my master's. So actually, to set the stage, I did do my bachelor's in civil engineering.
Civil engineering?
Yeah.
I thought about doing civil engineering, and then I
That is
stopped.
hard.
Like, how was it?
Well, you should all be glad I'm not doing that, because bridges would be
I know.
collapsing right now. If I
highly
did.
doubt that. But that was the idea. As I thought about civil engineering because like bridges being outside, that seems like a really cool thing to do.
Yeah.
So, but you
Yeah.
never built a bridge?
No, I had no, I didn't. Thank God. And my structural engineering teacher would probably tell you, thank God, as well. So
I feel like we've built bridges and leadership workshops or something like with
that would be
toothpicks
good.
and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that counts.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I moved here actually to the United States to do a master's, actually more in environmental science. So, moving over to studying, urbanization and like satellite data and all of that stuff. And so actually had an internship here with Lawrence Livermore. And then a lot of people started asking me, so what are you going to do after you do this degree in environmental science? And I wasn't quite sure. So I was like, okay, I do need to get a job so I can pay for all the studying that I'm doing. So I decided I will try out a few computer science courses. And, in those days...
In addition to all the work that you already did, it's like,
Yeah.
wow.
So I started doing a few courses in, De Anza College here in the Bay Area.
I went to De Anza.
Well, my
surprised you didn't.
my master's in civil, I was in actually San Jose State. So
How
so
did you
did
guys
that.
not
did I
cross
not know
paths
what-
before?
Yeah.
Did you tell me?
So,
Or-
no, I
no.
don't think we've
Why
talked
didn't you-
about this.
Yeah,
I rarely talk about the 6 months I spent doing. That's piece. But anyway, so I ended up moving over to Santa Clara University, applying for, getting a master's degree in computer engineering at that point. So, yeah.
It's a lot of schooling.
Yeah,
Yes.
a lot.
Wow.
Well, I like studying. I've realized that, I'm an academician at heart and love classroom environments even today.
So do you study now, or?
I love going back to classes. So anytime, there's did some generative AI classes, and I actually like the classroom setting where you go in and there's a professor and there's homework. I just love that. You do it for so many years. You kind of think that that's the best.
Okay, so with all these disciplines, what was your first job that you decided to, now this is the beginning of my career? Yeah.
My first job was at Sun Microsystems. Actually, I have a really interesting story on how I got the interview. You guys would love it. It was the days of job fairs, if you all remember. And so I got a flyer at home that Sun Microsystems was having a job fair. So I show up, I buy a cheap JCPenney suit.
Wow,
with
you're bringing it back
stockings
old
in.
school. JCPenney's was the cool thing in the catalog.
Hey,
and
that's all I could afford as a student. And I go for the interview. So you're standing in this line in this big cafeteria with tables, and you can see there were, managers who were looking. So I waited for almost 40 minutes in line, and I saw that the guy had two piles, and obviously one was larger than the other. So you knew which was the discard pile. So I go in, I said, it's my turn. I sit in front of him, and I can see his hand moving to the discard side. And I'm like, shit, I'm going to be here, and I'm not going to make it moment. And I was like, ask me one technical question. And he was like, what? I said, I've come here. I drove 40 minutes. I bought this cheap suit, and highly uncomfortable. Please ask me one technical question so I can go back with an experience of an interview. Which I thought was a fair ask.
It's a fair trade.
I love that.
So he was like, okay, just wait here for a minute. And then he disappeared, and then came back with a woman, and he just told her, I think you're going to like her. and then, so she took me aside, and this was the C++ days. So this lady, her name was Charlotte Allen, who would become my first manager. And she asked me a bunch of questions, which I guess I did well. Next thing you know, I got the interview and my first job. So that was my first interview experience.
Wow. And
So you're an IC starting out.
Yep.
What did you focus on?
So in those days, this is the world when Java had just started.
Yeah.
So they were converting all C++, Perl applications to Java. So my very first project was converting. Sun had this configurator, like a retail website called eSun, which is built on Perl and C++, and we were moving it all to Java. So that was my applet days Java programming world. So
yeah, that's
it's pretty
amazing.
cool.
And I just want to go back a little bit on that story that you just told, because you realized that he was going to reject you, like on the basis of what?
I was, a year into my
So
master's.
maybe
I
early, too young?
Yeah, he probably thought nothing super interesting here. And he was going to put me there. So yeah.
Yeah, but just again, kudos to you for recognizing what was happening in the moment and taking action. And I think sometimes when that does happen, it's we kind of you shy away from it. But you've always been that way. I've seen you at work.
Yep.
I've seen you at work.
Yeah, those things don't
Yeah.
change, right?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that grit and spunk. You have to kind of keep it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you
That-
stay true to that, which is beautiful.
Yeah, you're like, I'm gonna make a difference here, or call it out, or do something different to create a change here. So, and that's what's amazing about Aarathi. She will say what's on her mind, and there's no doubt about that. So it's good.
Unapologetic.
Now, which is good. That's what you need to be. So go back to now you're starting this career. You did all this, I guess, migration, and now working in Java, doing all the conversions. So how long were you at Sun before? Because you had Ariba for almost
17 years. Yeah.
Wow.
I was at Sun for 2 years.
Okay.
And obviously it was an IT division. So they went through a lot of changes. So I think somewhere 6 months before I decided to move, we had just been doing project scrapping. So at some point I figured I was at that point in my craft where I had to write a lot of code to be really good as a programmer. And I wasn't getting that. in the sort of job that I was in. So I decided I will go find another job. And so I had gone to Ariba interview, which I think in those days, Ariba was also like the hot startup, right? Like, the stock market favorite. It was a very hard interview. And in those days, we didn't have, HackerRank or anything. They made you write code on the board. Which
I remember those. How do you write code on a whiteboard? It's the most frustrating thing
and
ever.
I had one interviewer who I think even compiled the code and said, you're missing a semicolon. And I'm like, really? But anyways, it was like a fun interview. I thought it was really hard. They liked me. And my only thing when they asked me, what do you really want out of this job, was like, my response was, I want to write lots of code. And they're like, hell yeah, don't worry about it. We're going to make sure that happens. And, that's how I got the job. So I started as a software engineer. And 17 years later, I was a VP in the same company. So, I mean, obviously stayed in the same job. But the company transformed itself quite a bit. And so did I, as the company sort of changed. Every 2 years, I would do something different. And then I was a big part of Ariba's journey to cloud.
Oh.
So we went from, shipping CDs with software that would then get installed somewhere to actually doing cloud software, just culturally as an engineering organization, learning how to do that. I mean, people today think of CI/CD as a given. It wasn't a given. I was part of that generation that, even transformed to doing that. And that was the journey there. And
That's a big deal to get into the cloud and be part of that whole migration and the evolution of technology at that moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just software. It's also culturally changing how you work as an engineering team. And I think that was sort of the biggest change. It's not like you built something and 3 months later somebody found an issue.
Yeah.
You built something the day you put it out there, boom. It's going to go. Like you had no room for error. Your quality processes, your release, rollout processes, all of that had to change. How you thought about what you're building also had to change.
That's true.
That was just like this humongous transformation. If you all remember, in the B2B world, there are not many companies that made these transformations successfully because Ariba built like a system of record. You could not be wrong, right? There was a need for systems to be like accurate and precise. And there was just so much due diligence that went on that. So
wow. What about your transition from IC to manager? How did that go? Like, how long were you at Ariba as an IC before you got introduced to the opportunity to be a manager?
That's an interesting story as well. I think I had grown on the sort of the IC ladder really fast. Like I think every year or two I was, getting promoted. I was a principal staff. I was also a tech lead, which was like a team or a title that was sort of chosen by the CTO's team. So you got recommended by other geeks to be the sort of, elite group of geeks.
Yes.
So
good title.
Elite geeks. I like it.
And I always believed that, coding was my true destiny and that's what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. I loved, building stuff. And it just so turns out that, my manager got moved to working on something else. And for some period of time, we did not have a manager. So it looks like, I naturally stepped into that role. I was scrum lead. I was handling everybody. And then my product partner, who's also a very dear friend, she was like, you should apply for the job. I'm like, no way. I don't think I'm going to succeed. I think this is true for so many women I talk to. I can see that today, as a VP in an organization when I meet engineers, like, women who say this to me. And I'm like, gosh, you remind me of me. And I was truly in a world where I said, I'm not going to be good at that or, whatever. So I was just like, I just didn't think that was an option. I also had this thing about, it's a little bit of self-doubt,
of course,
ego,
yeah.
I don't know what it is, where I'm like, if they thought I was good at it, they would have asked me. And they haven't. And so there was that moment of, doubt that, maybe this is not it and I'm happy doing what I'm doing and I don't need to. And this friend in the product partner was like, of course not, just go talk to the director. So that time, and it was a female director. So I go in and ask her, hey, if I were to ask you,
I was to ask you,
well,
I'm not asking you right now.
Yeah. So it's like, would you, do you think it's a good idea? And she's like, heck yeah, if you want, the job is yours. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, so is it okay if I try it for some time? And she's like, Aarathi, we love you so much. You can do whatever you want. It'll be totally fine. So then, of course, I had to ask her the question. So if you thought I was good, why did you not ask me this before? And she goes, because everybody in the organization thought you didn't want it.
Yeah. See?
And I was in that moment where I thought, when did I tell them that?
It's
I
just
don't
an assumption that was
remember.
made.
And, maybe I did. Maybe I voiced my concerns openly. I don't know. Maybe I told people too many times that, I like being IC. I don't think I don't see myself as a manager. And a lot of us do that. Like we have so much doubt that we sort of wear it on our collar and, we bring it up. And so it was that moment of, oh, okay, I'm clearly sending signals which are not intended to be received by everybody, but people are receiving them. And they're making assumptions about me, which was probably not true or not thought out from my side. And there was a moment of learning for me. It's like, okay, be careful about what you say, because for whatever reason, that particular journey would have, slipped my, or that opportunity would have slipped my hand. Anyway, I tried, I became a manager. Obviously, I've been very successful at it and I'm still at it. So clearly, but it was interesting, where I had to make sure my director, I had asked her, I was like, hey, make sure that if I were to not like this, I would go back to being my good old self in the IC world. And she was just laughing. She's like, I don't think you're going to need it, but don't worry about it, But she was right. Here I am, years later.
What I like about your story, because I always hear about ask for what you want. Like that's like a given, and it's like, or else they don't know. But you're also talking about another part of it. So yes, do that. But also another part, like what kind of energy are you putting out there, or the unspoken words, or like those micro moments of, you have to be aware of how you're showing up, or else they're going to just make assumptions. Oh, she doesn't want it. She's not interested. So there's this, you have to kind of do both and be aware of how
it's
it is.
those conversations that happen without you in the room.
Yes.
And how do you then orchestrate those conversations? Are you saying something where people are making assumptions about you, and just watch out. And then that sort of led me to, you need a set of people that you can actually talk to and sort of, be yourself and say the things that you need to say. And that's going to be your board, friends and your community that you build. But maybe not for everybody's consumption. Just be watchful on what you're saying would be the thing. So
Are both of you intentional now? Because I know you have done a lot of work with women in tech as well. Like you said, when you came to LinkedIn, that was a big draw for you. So are you both pretty intentional in your leadership of identifying women or people in the organization that you can say, hey, this looks like it would be a good opportunity, and kind of planting the seed in front of them to see if they're interested?
Yeah. Hell yeah. I mean, Erica and I have been in so many calibration meetings together where we'll hear somebody, this person does not want to be, let's say, staff to senior staff. I'm like, that doesn't exist.
It's not true.
They're working hard to do what they're doing. So what is the meaning if they don't want it? That makes no sense. So I think we were always very particular and intentional about picking up on those vibes and making sure that, people just don't make assumptions. And I would talk to people. I know Erica would talk to people where we would, make sure that we're having this conversation. Then I would share my story, and then they'd be like, oh, you could see eyes light up. I've had lots of, female engineers sort of change their perspective.
It's so cool because you're taking from your experience and changing that for the next generation coming through. So you're giving them what you didn't get.
Yeah, and you don't want them to kind of suffer through how we just kind of accepted some of those things. And you talk about calibration meetings. I mean, there was meetings that we were in, and we'd be texting underneath, ready for this one? We're going to go. We're going to tag team. And that's what we would do. I mean, you have to strategize. It's not that there's any ill intentions of other people trying to do it. They don't sometimes just realize what they're doing, how they're doing, or to even make assumptions back to your point of what that person wants. No, I actually know them really well, and so do you. And you change it right in that moment. And again, what you just said is when you're not in the room, even more important that those discussions need to be had.
Yeah. I've even heard about new moms, and people are like, oh, she's a new mom. She won't want to take on that extra workload or get promoted to the next level because it's harder and she won't have the time. It's like, did you ask her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should ask her that,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, that sensitivity to know that you have to ask the, engineer, but at the same time, even for the engineer to know that she has more choices and that it's going to be okay.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think those are the parts that sometimes when you see like young moms struggle and leave, that's just the hardest. Actually, I think there's a stat as well.
Oh, yeah.
The biggest drop off for women happens post maternity leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're like, how am I going to go back to work and make this work? And I mean, we actually created a program with the other Aarathi at work to return back to work. It's like, it was so challenging. It's like, how do you ramp them back in and that they have choices they can get through? And it's challenging. It's super challenging.
And technology is changing so rapidly. It's like, how do you stay ahead? And then you feel like you're behind because you took X number of months off for maternity. It's like, well, I'm out of the game, I guess, but it's not.
No. And that's why I think it's great if men take paternity leave. Like, please take that leave. And that is a benefit that they have as well. It takes two to raise a child if you can, but no.
Yeah, changing the conversation from maternity to parenting, right? Like it's not a woman thing. Raising a child is it takes a village, truly,
it truly
including the dad. So,
Yeah,
Exactly.
they're
Last I checked,
yeah.
but anyway,
Okay, we could talk about that one.
yeah. So amazing career at Ariba. What you got to VP there, you made the transition from IC, and then you were there. You said 17 years, and then you decided to go to LinkedIn, which was kind of cool because I remember when you came to LinkedIn. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're someone at this level. It was like super exciting because there wasn't that many of us. And I want to know what made you decide to leave this, secure 17-year career at Ariba and then go over to LinkedIn. How did that happen?
well, I was trying to poach Annabelle to come back. So Annabelle, she's another colleague from LinkedIn
amazing.
time. She was in Ariba, and we were like cubemates and worked together for a long time. Good friends as well. So I decided that maybe she's bored of LinkedIn. Well, I wasn't bored of 17 years of one company, but anyways, we'll discuss that at a different time.
Another episode.
And so, we need another episode to that. So I actually had approached her to see if she wanted to come in as a CTO. And we were looking for one.
And she was running LinkedIn Talent Solutions at the time.
Yeah. And she had actually made a decision to sort of leave. And she's like, guess what? I don't want to come because I actually want to go do a startup. But, maybe Mohawk was the head of engineering is looking for somebody like you. So why don't you have the conversation? And one thing led to another. And, I took some time in between because I just said yes to a particular role at Ariba. So 16 years is when I had the conversation. 17 years is when we made the reality happen. And so we kept the conversation going. And there was a point in time where I was like, okay, maybe I should go try something new. And then again, for me, LinkedIn was an amazing company. It's also like, I was in a truly enterprise world. So LinkedIn had this opportunity of learning how consumer is done and how to think about social platforms. And for me, that was an exciting opportunity, even though I was going to start working on the enterprise side of LinkedIn. Yeah. So there was something I could give to LinkedIn at the same time. It was a huge learning opportunity. Not to mention, it was the first time, and I guess I was in my sort of 40s. So it was a moment of, there's a job here with a great purpose and impact. And there was this impact of, helping people manage their careers, find jobs. It was meaningful. It was meaningful. It's something that you can relate to. And so that was something that was like, super attractive. And at that time, my boss, Maria, she was an amazing, again, female leader. So if you all remember, I started my career with a female manager and I didn't have one after that. And so she was going to be another. So I'm super excited to sort of learn from, some badass engineering leaders as well. So that was sort of the, like, okay, I'm going to go dive in. It was scary. Yeah. It was scary because, in my previous job, I had grown up as an engineer. I knew every semicolon. I knew everything there. It was easy to be the expert. It was easy to be the leader. It was easy to sort of, earn that respect from your engineers. And here I was going to come outside in and do this. And there's also like, if you've spent 17 years in one place, you also wonder if you've built the right muscles.
Right.
And so LinkedIn journey was amazing from that perspective, where I got to flex some muscles, sort of, figure out what what I brought to the table. At the same time, how do you sort of earn the trust outside in?
Yeah. So how did you do and get that cred? Because I totally understand. When I went into the management track, I also was an individual contributor. I coded, I did all that stuff. And then so when you were in there, it's like, oh, I got the cred. Then you go into a leadership position for the first time and you're like, I'm starting from scratch, and you didn't write every semicolon.
Nope.
So how did you do it?
So I started out with, I got to know how to code. So I asked my, sort of manager, I said, put me on a project that sort of takes me top to bottom on the stack. So in my first 2 months at LinkedIn, I did do a feature that was adding some data fields to APIs to the experience side. And like, it was so crazy because everybody's like, are you sure you want to do this? You're like, the leader of the organization. You don't need to do any of this stuff. And in fact, actually, they gave me a trial run in the first week that I was there. They were like, you remember Licks? Which is the LinkedIn's,
the A/B testing at the time.
It was LinkedIn's toggling mechanism to sort of roll out code. And so when you finish rolling out a piece of feature completely to 100% of the users, you would take out think of it as an if then else. Yeah. So they're like, okay, there's this old Licks, you can remove it. So they probably thought, what is this VP going to know? If then else, how much can she screw it up? So we started with this. No, I didn't actually. Turns out when I removed the toggle, it broke a whole bunch of unit tests. So I debugged it and fixed it. So it turned out it was a 22 file change.
Wow.
And so Shen actually, he looked at it and goes, why do you change so many files? It's just turned out.
It was supposed to be one line licks or whatever.
And I was like, I broke all tests. So of course I have to fix it.
You.
So then they were like, oh, okay. And so that was my first sort of, in my first week at LinkedIn, and I had production code that I had written, which is kind of cool.
It's super cool.
So, and it took 23 minutes from time to check in to make it to production.
Really?
It was kind of cool. Yeah. CI/CD pipeline was amazing.
Wow.
So I was so
cred,
excited.
right? Yeah.
And then I did this one feature, which they kept like trying to talk me out of, but I was like super intent. But here's what it did. It helped me learn the language of the engineer. It helped me speak to them. You remember DMRC? It was very LinkedIn. It was a data sort of, control group that sort of monitored any sort of, data like description. Like if you were going to add a new data structure or a new entity in the database, you'd have to go through them, and they would make sure you're like got all your
a committee that would review.
Yep, that would review all the
it
changes.
Took a long time.
It took a long time and a lot of iterations. So I could actually relate to engineers when they complain about it, and and they knew that happened because I got rejected 3 times. The 4th time around, I had to take somebody with me to speak for me because I was clearly not speaking the right language to get it through. But yeah, that's how I kind of, sort of started making my introduction, learning the language. And of course, we had our, famous so disastrous project, NRJ, that I had to like roll up my sleeves on. So we had one of this big, huge migration at LinkedIn that was not going very well. And I had to dive in, roll up my sleeves and kind of, bring out sort of my enterprise chops. And I think those two were super validating.
And it made it happen. I mean, you had major cred. I mean, well respected at LinkedIn.
Yeah, so the project was called NRJ New Recruiter Jobs, I believe. And I remember Jeff Wiener, our CEO, had said, we're going to coin this into a verb. So next time I want somebody to sort of, hit something off the park, we're going to NRJ it. And that was like a moment. It was a very proud moment.
And you're new coming in, leading that.
That was good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you were at LinkedIn for
7 years.
7 years.
Yep. Yeah, it was another thing. When I first started LinkedIn, I promised myself I won't make it a very long stint, at least not 17 years.
Right.
Only because, I enjoyed that process of learning. And you realize that when you stay at a company very long, you kind of forget. Yeah. Some muscles get atrophied in terms of, your learning, people connections, just feeling uncomfortable. And I think that takes away from some really good, healthy learning. So I had promised myself, like, this one's going to be a shorter stint. 4 years was the clock.
Was it okay?
Yeah. So, and clearly overstayed the 4 years, but it was an amazing journey. So for me, the sort of biggest win of LinkedIn was transforming myself from a pure enterprise engineer to learning sort of the consumer side and how to start thinking about large distributed systems and all of that. So that was the change for me, which I was very proud of.
Yeah, you got to hit both sides of the marketplace and walked away with like both of those skills, which is amazing.
Yeah. And you started with consumer and then went into enterprise?
Yeah, I was on the
She did
I did the other direction.
opposite.
And then we were able to work together.
And then you combined forces and power team.
It was fun while it lasted.
It was good time.
But all good things must come to an end. So
No, but I like the point on, you're staying at a company for so long. I was at LinkedIn for 13 years, but I did different things at the company. But you do get that, like, hey, do you get stagnant a little bit? So either you have to do something different at the company or you're going to go find something else.
Totally. I mean, it's all about learning. I think that you also hit a point where you learn, you see the steady growth, and at some point you will feel like you've saturated and you're not learning. If you're starting every January thinking about, gosh, I need to look for a job, that's a good sign. You should probably look for another job.
we just talked with Catherine Fisher from LinkedIn. She's their career expert. And she said, you re-up every year. You kind of check in with yourself. Am I still learning? Am I still being challenged enough? Am I getting something out of it?
What you want to bring to the job again. So having that realization, now you're at Uber, which is another totally different company. So how is it going at Uber? What made you decide to go to Uber? Tell us, walk us through that journey.
Well, honestly, actually, Uber was not on the list of companies that I was thinking about. I got introduced to Praveen, our CTO. He's ex-LinkedIn. It looks like our Venn diagram of common people. It's pretty high. I had an amazing conversation with him, and I decided let me talk. I mean, Uber is one of those companies, which that I have been admiring from the outside in. Like, it's a company has been able to create a category of its own. It's just amazing. Like, if you really think of the scale at what they do, I mean, Uber is a verb now. I mean, people talk about, let's Uber here, do this, do that. And it's just amazing. So I've always been an Uber stalker, maybe is the right way to put it. But I have never actually pictured myself, working there. But then I started the interview process. I just met a series of very amazing leaders, began liking them very much. And at some point, Praveen, as part of the interview, they make you do like a product jam. They're like, hey, you're going to go work on the earner side of Uber. So if you think of Uber as a demand supply system, this is the supply side. And so why don't you play with the app? Come back to us, and the CTO and the CPO, we were going to have a conversation. So I decided to sign up
as an Uber driver.
Oh,
and I wish I would have known that.
So
did you actually drive and pick people up and do it?
Really?
So I didn't do to be a mobility sort of rideshare driver, there's more. You have to get your vehicle inspected and everything, but delivery is easier. So for the interview,
like Uber Eats.
So I signed up to being a delivery driver. And of course, apparently my background check went into sort of it got stuck. And I'm like, oh God, I don't know what's happening. So I had to call Praveen, say, hey, the jam is in like another 2 days and my background check's stuck. I don't know, what should I do? And he's like, okay, give me some time. So they figured out what happened. It got stuck with some external sort of entity.
Okay, so you have a clear background, Aarathi?
Well, hopefully.
What did we not know about
Hopefully I'm not a criminal. And so it turns out, so one day, so LinkedIn Sunnyvale, right? So Middlefield Road. So I'm getting out of work and I'm like, okay, let me hit the go online button and see what happens. And voila, I get this. I had to go to this Nepalese restaurant, pick up some food and drop it in NASA Ames. Did you know people live there? I didn't know that.
They live there.
So I pick it up. bungled through the process of, picking up the order and everything, but newbie problems. And I start driving, and then of course I'm like, I'm not sure where I'm going. And I it's a gated community, so you go in, and there's the security guard, and I asked him, so do people actually live there? He's like, yeah, there's an apartment complex right in. So there's this in sort of amongst the hangars, there's one apartment complex, and and I get to drop off the food. But it was an interesting experience there. But then I'm also thinking about safety. Imagine young kids who want to do delivery. How do you solve for that? I came back and I'm sitting in the car looking for I'm going to get the next ride from here. It doesn't work like that. You kind of have to be closer to the hot zone. And so I'm like, okay, let me drive back home and see what happens. And then, I get closer to El Camino and I start getting more offers. And I picked up a couple more, dropped off a few. So I did earn a good $13.70.
Did you get a tip?
Wow.
Yeah.
So excited, so proud. I just had my mom really worried for me. She said, I thought you're going to be VP of engineering. Why are you doing deliveries? And I'm like, Mom, that's the app I have to build, so I have to know. But it was an amazing learning experience. It's also made the job very real, the problem very real. Just working for earners, being able to make the impact and, just help. From that perspective, my journey of LinkedIn and impact and, helping solve real problems just kind of came together. So that was the moment where I'm like, yeah, I think I like the role. I like the job, and I hope they like me too. It's a flip, when you're doing interviews, you kind of get there. And so that's how. I mean, obviously they like me too. So here I am. And leading an amazing engineering team. I've been there 6 months now.
Okay.
Has been, I honestly frame it as I've been learning, drinking from the fire hose, maybe multiple. Uber is definitely complex business.
Okay.
It's at that helm of physical and digital. There's so much there in terms of what happens. It's also very regional. The different cities, even neighboring cities, very different sort of, attributes in terms of how earners work, what the regulations are, what can happen. It's just amazing. So it's been an amazing learning experience and been having a blast.
Was there any sort of hesitation from you, knowing that, culturally Uber had not the greatest reputation for a while, but they come back and it's much better now from what we hear in the news, but was there reservations?
Yeah, so, I am a believer that interviews have a way of, flushing out both, the interviewee and then the other sort of side of the world's deepest sort of, underlying underpinnings, if you will. And I think I spoke to almost 13 people before my sort of, interview ended. And honestly, I just was amazed with the set of, talent. And I didn't pick up on anything there that I could pinpoint. And it's not like I did not have that exposure. So for me, that was a pretty sort of validating point. Not to mention, I think, Dara, the CEO there now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done an amazing job of bringing that true sort of, Uber culture. So yeah, I mean, it is whatever was Uber, I wasn't there, so I can't speak about it. Whatever is amazing. My journey in the 6 months that I've been there everybody has been, extremely welcoming in terms of onboarding and business side of it. Doesn't matter product business. It's just been an amazing 6 months where I have not felt any of that. I think it's a different place.
I think it's a completely different place. I know several people even that I worked with at LinkedIn that went to Uber, and they're, something that happened in the past. I mean, I actually think it's a remarkable success story when you get the right leaders in the company.
Absolutely.
And you get the right people. I mean, you have the right culture, and then also people create the culture. So it's all about how you're hiring that talent, how you're nurturing that talent. But it's amazing. I think it's great. I think it's a great company. And I remember we were talking about it when you were deciding to go to Uber, and it was just, and you have people like Praveen and other friends that you get to work with as well. I mean, it's a great community.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's been amazing. The culture there, it's so huge. it's an amazing engineering team as well. I mean, engineering culture, what we build, it's just so real. It's at that, you get to experience it every day. It's earning opportunities. You talk to all of our drivers, and then you realize that this is life for some people.
Oh, it
this
is.
is like, and you get to sort of change that, and it's amazing.
I have some of the best conversations with my Uber drivers. It's like a moment that you get to just talk. I mean, I'm one of those people. I'm like, maybe they need to have a little feature. Will you be talking? Yes, I'll be talking to you the whole
lot.
time. It's fun. It's almost like therapy. It's like those are intimate conversations that you can possibly
Absolutely.
have in the car. And then some people are like, I like that they also have some like, do you want anyone to talk to you? Do you want silence? They do it on the other side or help with luggage.
air conditioning preferences, all that.
Yeah, it's great.
But there's a new preference that people can pick up on, which is exciting.
I love, and I guess this is where we talk about safety, right? Especially with women Uber drivers and women getting an Uber, whether it's late at night. You hear all those stories in the media. I love that you have a feature that's called Women's Preferences, and you would get to actually be able to be paired up with a woman Uber driver. I know I get super excited when I have a woman Uber driver.
Yeah, one of our team members for HumanizeHer just showed up for production this week, and she took an Uber from the airport, and she was able to select it, and it was like the highlight of the week. I'm like, what about, we're not the highlight of the week? She's like, no, my Uber ride with the woman driver was my highlight. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about choice. What your preferences are. And, if you so choose to be matched to a certain, kind of drivers with certain kind of vehicles, preferences. I think it's all about making that choice available and making sure that, both sides of the equation, whether you're a rider or a driver, you're able to sort of express that in us to be able to, handle that.
It must be so easy to build.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
It is not.
Non-engineer over here. I'm all, I just click a button on off.
I actually want to talk about how you actually do that matching and then who actually gets this feature. And I guess you have to have identity, gender identity. Like, how does all of this work? Yeah.
Well, so we'll start with it's a choice, right? You have to make that explicit choice between both the driver and the rider.
Both sides.
Right. Both
To
sides,
identify?
Yes.
Okay.
You want to be able to do this. Again, from our LinkedIn days, we worked on the recruiting product. It's not easy to do any of these sort of gender specific features, especially in terms of matching. You could get it wrong. Inference is always going to be hard to do. So it's not about that. It's about clear choice. And if you so choose, yes. And again, getting it wrong is going to be disastrous, right?
Yeah.
You can get it right, but if you get it wrong, it's not going to be the best of experiences. So I think that's the piece that you have to be exceptionally careful about when you're building systems that are based on sort of intelligence and, a little bit of non-deterministic behavior as well. But it's all about making sure that the choices are there. I mean, it's as simple as you want a conditioning, talking, no talking. Right. What is sort of the driver's preferences versus the riders as well. So
do you both have to select, the driver and the rider both have to say, yes, I will share my gender, so that then the matching can be an option for them?
Yeah, because you can't infer just by names or anything like that. You get it wrong, to your point, right?
I mean, just going into specifics, there has to be safeguards where you double check, cross check. Yes. And of course, remember, we also do a lot of background checks and all of that for our sort of earner ecosystem. So there is a matter of making sure that some of those are there. I mean, it's something that we've piloted now. We're testing in a few cities.
Okay. So it's not globally available?
Not yet. I believe we're in about 3 cities. So, but we're excited. I mean, imagine if we can make this work and if we can get this right, it'll be powerful.
It'll be super powerful. Yeah. And then also I wonder if that would also increase the population of women Uber drivers too. Yeah. And can you also just make that exclusive? I will only feel safe because some women at night, if they're going to pick up some men,
I mean, there's a
maybe
lot of
not wanna do it.
nuances to that, right? Like it's really hard to kind of sort of blanket say some of those things. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of optionality we can bring in terms of safety. In fact, I mean, if you look at some of like countries like India, like earning opportunities for women, like how do you kind of make sure like they can get some opportunities there? I think the implications of being able to do this and do this at scale are huge. And so it's something we are very excited about, but it's also something we have to tread very, very carefully. Yeah.
It makes sense. But I definitely can see it, especially from a woman's point of view. Like if you wanted to become an Uber driver, you're ramping slowly into it. And especially with a feature like that. And then, hey, I have more confidence, or maybe I feel better, or like how you use the features of ratings. Can you actually, on that point, as a driver, if someone doesn't have a good rating on, I'm a proud 5-star person, but I guess, can they deny someone on the other side?
I mean, you can always decline.
always deny, always,
You can
okay.
always sort of say, I won't take an offer, but that doesn't always work very well in your favor as well. So it's, again, like a very nuanced conversation at that point, right? It's not a simple 1 or 0. What goes into a match is just a far more complicated thing than just your rating and their rating. There's a lot more that like
Give us
applies
some examples.
there.
Let's decode this.
Proximity, all that.
What? Okay, maybe 5 variables or something that you have in the database.
But yeah, I mean, the ratings do matter when we match. Like, higher the rating, obviously the better, so the match. Again, from a driver perspective, their ratings match as well. But it's not just the ratings. It's also your locations, proximity, your choices, your preferences. All of that sort of feed into it. And there's like multiple rounds of sort of match and like, figuring out. It's a pretty complex algorithm.
Got it. And then I guess, AI is everywhere, but has that changed anything for Uber? Anything new that you're doing there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in terms of like, well, marketplace. You and I have run marketplace teams. Of course, is full of matching and sort of ranking. All of that is AI like at its best, right?
Right.
So it's not something new. From a generative AI perspective, there's a lot of features, functionality in terms of, ability to reach out to support, explanation for drivers, in terms of like, their earnings breakdowns. There's a bunch of things that we are doing in terms of how do we bring some of that, sort of new tech up front and central for Uber. Things like voice to text to voice, especially, we've Uber does motor or two-wheel drives in LATAM, and they're kind of countries which are very popular. So again, safety. So you can't take your hand off and start texting, etc. So you're obviously like thinking about doing a lot of other sort of, what are some different ways where we could get that communication between the app and the driver going from a driver perspective. I think are things that Uber's definitely thinking about and launching.
Yeah, because I love that, especially the communication between the two, because I mean, there's also things like where exactly is your location and going back and forth, or like I left this in the car. Or it's like I've had that happen where it's like, oh, I left that. How are you going to find my item? But usually, they work well with finding tracing back.
Yeah.
That's good.
So you're doing great work, like your product partners and you're making impact for women with the product itself. But what about internally? Now that you're in there, is there any sort of like women in tech vibes that you're gonna pick up now that you're 6 months in?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a Women in Tech ERG, so they're a pretty active group of engineers there. Just in terms of, women in leadership, like, we're trying to get involved with HumanizeHer and other sort of, women's organizations as well. But for definitely, like, there's a bunch that, I'm sort of putting up my hand and trying to step into Erica's shoes, which is big to do, but I have a mentor that I've seen, sort of do something like that. Like it was a movement at LinkedIn. Yeah. It's definitely inspired by that, and obviously want to be able to replicate some part of it, and wouldn't dare to sort of think that I can do it at the scale that you did.
You definitely can. I again, you definitely can. I'm here to support you 100%. It was so fun.
all your accolades. You got 20 degrees,
I know.
and
It's like,
you've
you're
been
gonna
at
do it
7
better.
companies for 20 years.
I don't know. So we'll definitely do that. So in fact, I'm like the exec sponsor for Grace Hopper. So we're very excited to go there, and think we have a very strong sort of presence there. We have lots of speakers. We have a lot of people going there. So it's just very excited. Like to bring that feeling of community and what I experienced at LinkedIn.
I see an Uber times Humanize Her combo showing up at conferences in the near future.
There you go.
Whatever.
That would
Follow
be
your lead. Let's
fantastic.
make it happen.
Yeah,
totally.
Okay, so
Beautiful.
it sounds like you're in a perfect place, and you have the right momentum. So proud to hear where you're at and your story, and thank you for continuing to pay it forward to the community inside a company like Uber and outside the company, and that's why you're here today. We can talk to you forever and ever. We will continue this conversation. But with that, one of the things that we like to wrap up the show with is, are there any women that you want to pay it forward to, give a shout out? This is your platform. And so, the mic is yours.
That's a hard one, but I think I want to give a shout out to all of the youngsters. In fact, I had like an intern kind of reach out and say, hey, you're a female VP. Can I come talk to you? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so we got half an hour coffee and we started chatting. And she talked to me about imposter syndrome and how she felt. And I'm like, gosh, we get them young. How does that happen? She's like third year of college. So it's a huge shout out to all of the young female engineers in college. There is a community ahead. I mean, we live in a different time today than, what I didn't tell you all is my mom is a rocket scientist, actually.
Wow.
She worked for India's like missile program, so she's an engineer. And for me, like, what she did was extraordinary in a time in India where it was not common. And so for me, that has been the bar always, like, to be like her. And I think everything that we all do here now is that for the sort of next generation. But hopefully we've made it better, yes? Like
I think
slightly
so.
better.
I think so. I mean, at least they're talking about it in a proactive way, whereas I think we were more silent about it, So, and then also you're approachable, like you're able to have those conversations. So we're making progress, incremental progress. We want to go faster, but we'll get there. It's a marathon.
Yeah. So my big call out is to all the girls in colleges wondering if you can make it. You will. I mean, I'm an immigrant who came here like 30 years ago, learned the ways of this world and made it, hopefully, if this is what making it means. And there's no reason why any of them cannot. You just have to believe.
Yeah. And I think that bar you're talking about that your mom set for you, you've reached it and probably surpassing it. And I hope, she tells you that you're proud.
Well, she's always like the one champion I have. And I do have to shout out to my husband. He's been the biggest believer in me. I think it does help when you have a supportive spouse. And I do have to give him that credit.
Oh, I love it. Kudos to your husband. He is a nice guy. I've met him. He's a nice guy. We like him. Kudos to him. He's a good one. All right.
We should keep him.
Yeah.
Well, I've had it for 30 years now.
Just keep it going.
Yeah, you got this. Okay, well, with that.
Thank you so much, Aarathi. This has been awesome.
Yeah, we learned a lot and a lot of good nuggets and to share. So thank you. And with that,
that's a wrap.
Humanize Her would not be possible without the crew behind the scenes. Ash Blodgett, our director and creative producer, for guiding us with expertise, creativity, and passion. Becky Davis, our talented director of photography and creative producer, for bringing our stories to life with stunning visuals. And Kristen West, our director of brand and design, for creating an emotional brand identity. To our listeners, we're on this journey together, and we love hearing how this podcast has helped you. It keeps us going, so please keep sending us your stories to her@humanizeher.com to be featured in upcoming episodes. And if you'd like to help us with this movement, please support by rating and subscribing. Until next time.